on how organizations can best leverage mobile technology to achieve business-critical results. Prior to joining Atlantic BT, through her own startup, she conceptualized and launched one of the first nonprofit mobile apps on iTunes back in 2009. Tap and Give delivered brand awareness, fundraising, and supporter engagement to participating charities. The app and name were bought by her previous employer in 2010. Her expert knowledge in the smartphone application and mobile web arenas, coupled with her extensive work leading strategic mobile content marketing campaigns, have granted her numerous speaking engagements and guest blogging opportunities. Her 10+ years of experience in the corporate, nonprofit, and entrepreneurial environments provides her with a unique blend of experience and the ability to collaborate with almost any client. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Tanya Zampieri.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. It seems weird that it's only 2:30 and this is the last session of the day, but I don't know about you, but it's kind of nice to not feel like you're cramming like so many sessions into one day, and you can actually learn and reflect and network and just kind of have some downtime too, which I'm looking forward to after this as well. So any of you who are on Twitter, maybe you've known me before or have followed me in the past, or have been following me for quite some time, because I've been using iHeartCharity since 2009 when I started that and created Tap and Give. Tap and Give is actually a complete failure when it comes to what I was setting out to accomplish, and I'm completely okay with saying that, because what it did afford me and brought me was just the invaluable knowledge that I've been able to cultivate over the last 3+ years in the mobile space, specifically for nonprofits. And so that's why I'm standing here with you today. I tell people, oh, I'm passionate about mobile technology. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I mean, yes, I love what it's able to do, right? It's not that I'm so excited about the technology in and of itself. It's how the technology of mobile has enabled you all, your supporters, your constituents to engage on a completely different playing field and in completely different ways. And that I'm excited about, and I am very passionate about making sure that as many nonprofit leaders as possible understand how to tackle this channel to be really effective. And I have worked in nonprofits, so I know completely where you're coming from when it comes to being overworked and not enough budget and all that good stuff. So use iHeartCharity with your tweeting during the session. I usually walk around a lot, but I don't have a mobile clicker here. I'm not mobile today. Sorry, I have a lot of corny jokes I'll probably have. But anyway, the agenda, we're going to talk about why. I'm going to have to go through those fun little graphs for just the early part, but I'll try to make them as fun as possible. To talk about why it's so important for each of you as nonprofit leaders, or frankly, even if you're a vendor here and you have not thought about your mobile strategy for how your tools can be used by your clients. I think that any of you can learn quite a bit today. Small steps to get mobile ready. I'm going to really be talking about some tactical things, so be sure to write those down. Things that each of you as different nonprofits should consider when it comes to creating a mobile strategy for your particular organization. And then if we have time after the questions, and you can see it online, there is a mobile strategy sheet that I had uploaded, which you can even do on your own, and you should be fully able to once you get through today's session. So I like to always get a pulse of who I've had in the room with me. Anybody here from development and fundraising? Obviously, a big part of your portion of you are going to be. How about marketing and communications? Probably a lot of the same hands if you do all of those things together, which I used to do in my nonprofit experience. Operations and finance. Is there anybody here from operations or finance? Okay, a couple hands. Executive director or board members? Couple handful, okay, so obviously very much geared towards development, which makes sense. How about educational institutions? Okay, healthcare, health and human services, environmental or advocacy specific, arts and humanities. Okay, what ones did I miss? Anybody want to give a shout out? Yes.
Foundation.
Okay.
Professional Association.
Okay. Professional associations, foundations. Anybody else? I guess we pretty much covered the gamut there. I just like to, have an idea so that I can give examples specific to your different causes. How many of you are totally frazzled and have no idea what to do when it comes to mobile strategy? Okay. This is maybe what you may be looking like back at your office, or even perhaps in some of these sessions. I know that it seems to be very, geared towards social media when it comes to this conference, and I know that that's a really important component of what you all are doing. But mobile and social media are definitely so many different colloquialisms, but they're very much the same in a lot of ways. So we'll talk about that. Okay. So really, I want to do some very basic breakdown here. I just went to Carlos Dominguez's session. He knocked it out of the park when it came to his presentation. So mine's not going to be quite as beautiful as that. So I just want to prepare everybody. But that was a really engaging one, and I hope that a lot of people are going to try that out. But when it comes to mobile, there's two specific areas that I really want to be clear on. There's the technology side of things, and then there's the mobile marketing side of things. And so the technology side is obviously going to be more the SMS, smartphone apps, mobile web. It used to be, and this is an interesting point that Carlos made in the last session. I mean, social media wasn't around 10 years ago, but mobile phones have. Now, of course, I had one starting, I think, in the early 90s. I don't know about any of you, but they were definitely something that, you didn't really talk on them unless you absolutely had to. Right, and I remember about 2005 or so, people started texting me, and I was like, "What are you doing? I don't have a text plan. Please don't text me." There might be a few of you still out there that are in that same position, but for the most part, I mean, the carriers have made it so easy to just be like, "Yeah, just give me the unlimited," and so obviously texting is a big component of mobile, but now that smartphones are a full 50% of the the penetration of mobile across the board, and that actually number goes up to about 75% of U.S. adults when you look at people 45 and under. Smartphone apps and mobile web are really a big player now with what you guys need to do, and that's really where I'm going to focus the majority of today's conversation, because I think for many years, or at least the last 2-3 years, mobile and fundraising, everybody thought about Haiti, everybody thought about Japan, and a lot of nonprofits, perhaps even some of you, decided to try to do text to give, and it fell flat. You spent money, you didn't get the return that you were looking for, and so that's really a big area that that I've been trying to educate on from a holistic perspective. That mobile web is really one of the easiest and least expensive things that you can do to mobilize and get donations, and we're going to talk about that because I think that that's where the majority of you need to focus your efforts on. And if anybody has any questions, I want this to be very much an interactive thing because you're all here with different levels of education about mobile, and so I really want it to be things that you get out of. So I'm going to try to go through a lot of this stuff so that we can have a very interactive discussion because, again, I think that this is an area where there's no waiting anymore. We are at the point where each and every one of you need to be doing at least something small and start pulling investments in order to engage with your constituents. So, this is about 6 months old almost now, but this is to kind of just give you a very basic, AdMob is and ComScore are two great places to go for a lot of these stats and resources, but they have been doing quarterly updates on consumer usage of mobile devices. Obviously, text messaging still stands up there at the top because frankly it's been around the longest. It has more mobile devices can do mobile texting than, say, access the mobile web. But look at these numbers, as far as downloading apps, using the browser, social networking, that's not a huge surprise there. Gaming, that's where mobile apps really started, so that's not a surprise either. But I mean, this is a Swiss Army knife, in your pocket. I mean, you really can do anything now. And so I really wanted to articulate how many different ways that we're using mobile. Okay, I love infographics, and mobilefuture.org had a great one. It's not obviously in full size there, and so I'll let you go ahead and take a look at that at your own leisure. But some of these quotes, 792 mobile apps are downloaded each second. Video, that's not a big surprise, video makes up over 50% of data traffic. And again, it goes on to Facebook and Twitter. I mean, as I said, mobile and social media are areas that are so, they're intermingled, and it's just impossible to not have one without the other. Okay, so we've clearly hit a mobile tipping point, because hopefully most of you can see that this infographic actually shows somebody on the toilet. So if we've gotten to the point now where people are taking calls, texting, and doing things in the privacy of their bathroom, then you know that obviously this is where you want to be, right? But it's kind of tongue in cheek. But this is Mobile Marketing Association. They put out a lot of really great stats as well. But the point I'm trying to make here is that clearly people have completely taken their mobile devices to be the most important thing practically. People leave the house without it, they go back, they forget they didn't bring their wallet. I mean, it will be your wallet soon. So the point I'm making is probably stated, and we'll move on. So I put this in because this is where probably everybody is starting to think about after today, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I have so many things to do. Where's the pool? Where's the margarita and the beer? It's almost that time, but not quite yet. But I just thought I'd put some little humor in here because it is a lot. I mean, and frankly, I get overwhelmed trying to be the mobile strategist. And, you ask people what that is, and I mean, there's as many answers as there are people that you ask, because it's really trying to keep tabs on, how to best engage, with your, I want to say donors, but really it starts even before that. And that's really hopefully what you guys are getting from the social media classes as well today, is that, you really need to work on getting new donors, new engagement, and then you cultivate them into becoming, those lifelong donors that you're starting to lose and replacing that funding. Okay, so why should you care? More and more people are looking at mobile as a way, and frankly, you can start thinking about your own habits as well. You're waiting for Tommy's baseball game to finish, you're waiting in line at the grocery store, or probably the post office these days. You don't go to the post office anymore. You're multitasking. You've got a few minutes, so let's go ahead and go through those emails and see which ones you're going to keep and read later, and which ones you're just dumping. You're connecting with people, you're looking up on social media. I mean, this is obviously a younger guy, but I mean, it's a lot. It's most people now that have a smartphone. They're just able to do basically anything that they want to do from wherever they are. And so what that means to what you have to do from a marketing perspective is really get clear on messaging, and also how you're going to deliver that messaging to your constituents. So this stat here has even been moved up, because retailers, as when the internet was launched, they were doing the internet, they were doing online shopping, they were really pushing that as far as how we were going to use the internet. Well, obviously they jumped onto mobile just as quickly, and so I don't know if you've started noticing, but the number of emails that are starting to go out, they're really clear and concise. That's only going to increase, and by the end of the year, when the holiday season is kicking in, that actual number of emails that's being opened is going to cross over that 50% threshold. Okay, so how do you get mobile ready? Well, I've done a few things here, and really it's about starting to access a lot of resources. Obviously you're here with AFP, they put out a lot of great reports, Convio, Blackbaud. Convio, I just got an email today, they're doing a free session, probably a webinar on how to create a mobile roadmap. You don't certainly need to be a client of theirs to sign up for these things. They'll hope that one day you are, but and I'm not trying to give them any sort of plug or anything, but the bottom line is that you don't have to look very far to just get engaged. You know, if you don't have the time, I suggest finding somebody probably who is, you know, really engaged and has a smartphone to be your mobile evangelist in-house. Have them start researching, have them start using Google Alerts and seeing what your other organizations that are similar to yours are doing in mobile. Does everybody use Google Alerts? Is that, so, I mean, it's a free tool, and I mean, you can have the emails sent daily, weekly, whatever it is, but information is happening so fast, so much content is coming out these days that, you know, you really need to stay up on top of it. And you know, so using Google, understanding your analytics. I mean, I know that having worked in nonprofit, I mean, Google Analytics, I hear from nonprofits every day, they can barely just keep a handle on it, but you really do need to understand what's happening with your metrics. And a lot of people say, oh, well, I'll worry about creating a mobile presence on the web once my visitors are 10% coming from mobile devices. And I say, absolutely not. I mean, the reason that you're probably not seeing them is either you're not like looking at it correctly at Google Analytics, perhaps, or the fact that you're waiting for something that's already happening. So my suggestion is to really start taking action. Chronicle of Philanthropy. I don't know if you received their publication, but they had a great article last week on responsive design. And so I was really excited to see that the leaders in our industry are starting to show a lot more examples of, I think it was the Environmental Defense Fund. They had just redesigned their website, and I apologize, I should have probably pulled it up, but it happened so fast, and I just wanted to make mention of it. But responsive design is a new technology that's coming out, which I'll get into a little bit later. But you need to stay on top of the information and see what is happening. All right, so mobile-ready steps and tools. I'm getting the sense it's getting a little quiet in here. Okay, so update messaging and formatting. Is anybody already doing that? Give me an example of what maybe you are doing. Does everybody understand what I'm meaning by that?
You mean making it mobile ready? Mobile.
Yes, your messaging.
I know what it that's why I'm here. I know what it is. I haven't done it yet.
Okay. Has anybody started doing any messaging at all yet?
Well, we cut down our signatures on email and are using plain text instead of HTML.
Okay. Say the first part again.
Cutting down the signature on emails is shorter, so people are having to scroll through super long.
Oh, so when you send out emails from your personal email, is that what you're meaning?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Using plain text instead of HTML for some stuff.
That's definitely a great start. I also think even thinking about things like your email subject line, really important, because if I would assume, how many of you read your email on your smartphone in this room? Raise your hands. Okay, so it's virtually like 100%. And I'm sure that you've seen emails that are just really the subject line completely went off the phone and you have no idea and you're just like, I don't have time for this. So where does it go? It goes in the little delete box at the bottom of the phone if you have an iPhone. So really getting clear about what it is that you want that person to do. They need to understand that with that email. So it's really getting clear about the messaging, not only in the subject line, but also, simple things. Like if you use constant contact or eye contact or, any of those emails, switch to the single column versus, it used to be that a lot of, you get real fancy with doing a lot of the email newsletters and you have double columns, and you have lots of big pictures. You really have to simplify that and almost go counterintuitive now to what used to be the norm, right? Because frankly, if you're reading inside of a smartphone, and let me just clarify, when I'm talking about mobile here, I'm really not talking about tablets because I think of those as actually very different devices in the way that we think of them as, individuals and consumers. So I'm talking about your personal device that you're keeping in your purse and you're keeping in your back pocket, the ones that you still can text and call with and so forth. So I just wanted to clarify that. But when it comes to messaging, this is something that you really need to think about because, and political campaigns have done this fabulously, And I don't use them as good examples very often of things, but when it comes to actually people taking action, particularly with donations, they have done a phenomenal job because there's three things that they think about. They think about time, so they really engage people in saying, we need this many people to give this much money in order to accomplish this goal, okay? And so when you think about if you're doing an appeal on email, you really need to start thinking about how that's going to translate on the mobile side as well. Does that make sense to people? Is that something that maybe you thought you've been doing already, you just didn't realize it? A little bit? Okay. I guess I just talked about the compelling calls to action. Also, I know there weren't many of you in here, but advocacy is a huge, you've probably been hearing about it in some of the sessions today. Advocacy is enormous when it comes to the potential with mobile because, again, you're asking people to do something that's relatively quick and easy, but yet they feel like they're making a difference. And so when you're looking at engaging people versus actually getting direct donations, this is a great way to cultivate a relationship is by making them feel that they're making a difference with the advocacy campaign that you've been running. And then, eventually they're going to feel like, wow, like I was able to make change happen in your organization. And now I'm going to be more willing and invested in giving to you as a donor. So, integration of offline communications. And I don't know if any of you know Joe Waters. He's got his own blog, Selfish Giving, and he's worked in cause marketing for ages. And his book just came out, QR Codes for Dummies. I met somebody, I think yesterday, they said there's enough information to have a book made about QR codes, and yes, indeed there is. It's actually the portable version. It's a very quick read. And it's not only specific to nonprofits, but I found a lot of really great resources in here. And Josh, I know that you had a question about QR codes and their uses, and I wanted to see if you could share it with me or with the group so we can talk about it a little bit more.
Just mainly, I showed you on the back of my business card, there's 2 different QR codes, one directly to our Twitter page, one to our Facebook page, but I want to see more of the way that can be incorporated into special event fundraising.
Absolutely.
Things that I've been playing around with our exec is, on the inside cover, there's a QR code takes you to a YouTube video. It's a 15-second welcome video from the exec saying thank you for coming to the event.
Mm-hmm.
Or, during the ask of the event, as opposed to then taking the pledge card and hopefully sending it back in, they can zap the QR code and it goes directly to their, the online donation portal. I haven't convinced them yet to get to that point, but that's where I'd like to see it go because
Sure.
it's not being utilized enough. I don't think.
Well, right, and I mean, one thing that Joe points out, how many of you have scanned a QR code before? Okay, so over half of you have. And how many of you have landed on a page that was not optimized for mobile? Okay, how frustrating is that? And how, especially if it was a nonprofit QR code. I mean, it's one thing if it's some retailer, it's like, oops, they just spent some money and, we're not able to really accomplish their goal. But the whole point is, of course, like you said, I mean, it's easy enough to send something to social media and then it'll be, either the app will get pulled up if it's on the person's phone or it'll go into the mobile web version because Twitter and Facebook and everybody else is already invested in mobile. But if you don't have the correct form that's formatted for mobile, then, you really don't want to use QR codes to send, to create more donations. What I would recommend in how to use QR codes and how to get more people engaged is integrate it into all of your offline. I mean, QR codes, there's still a lot of debate whether it's going to be around forever. NFC, the near field communication, is anybody familiar with that terminology, near field? Yes. That's still several years off. So I know that there's been a lot of hype about it and everything, but it's really not going to come into our everyday usage for quite a long time because the technology required is just, it's still a long ways off as far as adoption. But when it comes to QR codes, it's really, such an easy way. So you don't have, you don't have to enter in the URL, by hand with your fat fingers on the screen. It just allows, you download the QR code app on your phone, and Joe does a great job of if you don't know anything about QR codes, this book will make you an expert because he talks about it from A to Z. And so what I would recommend is make it easy for people. You still send out annual appeals, you still send out letters every once in a while, or newsletters asking for money. Put a QR code on every single thing and tell them what it is that they're going to be able to do if they scan the QR code. There's nothing more frustrating, right, than not knowing what you're expected to do when you're scanning it. So obviously you want to make sure that people know, but absolutely you have to make sure that it is optimized for mobile when they land on it. So I would start with that, and as far as Josh's like events, I think you have to be careful, right? Because it kind of is that if you're doing a fundraising event where you've already asked people to raise a lot of money, like if it's a walkathon or a bike-a-thon, anything like that, there's going to be different ways to perhaps get them more engaged, on a one-on-one level. What I would use at events like that, and again, it's going to depend on the event, because if some events might have silent auctions, which is a whole nother, discussion. But, if you've got a lot of people are at the event that maybe only give that one time, right? You're like, I'm never going to get a donation from them again. They're just coming to the event because they care about so-and-so or connected this way, right? I mean, that's you see one-time donations. That's a big problem for a lot of charities. So what I would do is I would make it more engaging. I would say, hey, enter our Facebook contest by scanning here, and then you get them engaged in social media. You start a relationship. You get them, excited about what you're doing. So you're capturing them in a different way versus just expecting them to donate to you again. So those are some things that I would start experimenting with, because QR codes are not, super expensive, nor is it expensive on the grand scheme to get mobile optimized donation pages done. It's really something that's going to depend on, who you use, whether it's PayPal or whether it's Convio or Salsa or, any of the other platforms out there. But as I just said, I think that mobile web forms, this is not sexy and exciting stuff here, but it's really going to be useful, because if you're sending out emails, email donations are going up across the industry, and people cannot easily give to your cause, then they're going to just bounce. They're going to bounce off of that. They're going to say, well, I'll do it later when I'm on my desktop. Well, guess what? They're not on their desktop. They're not on their laptop, burning their laps. No, they're on their phone, watching TV, tweeting about whatever, and, doing other things. And if you need to make it as simple as possible, that's just the bottom line. Mobile website and mobile apps, again, I think that we can talk about these for half a day. I think that, two big points I really want to bring up is that mobile websites, when I first started getting into the industry, there was still a lot of inability to access the phone's technology. So what happened is that you would want to build like another whole separate site, and there's certainly a lot of products out there that allow you to do that. The problem is that then you're having to manage two sets of content, right? And who wants to do that? It's just a time zapper, and you're already stretched for time. And, so what I'm starting to see a lot more now of, which was in that Chronicle of Philanthropy article, is responsive, which means that, at the same time, you're having to spend extra money on the front end to have extra development put into your WordPress site, your Joomla site, your, whoever you use. It's going to adjust based on which screen it's being read on. So if any of you are looking at doing like a site redesign anytime, and you're just like, wow, we've had the same site for the last 10 years and it's really, out of date, I would definitely talk to your, web development company about their capabilities in responsive or adaptive design. It's not something you're hearing a lot about yet, but Boston Globe has started doing it. You're not hearing a lot in the nonprofit sector, but it's being done in the for-profit sector, and it's being done with great results. So it's something you're going to hear about more and more. Yes?
Can you give us some more resources of who else we can contact to learn more about mobile websites?
So
Is it our own IT?
yes, exactly. So it really depends. If you do you work at all with an outside agency that helps build? No.
We do everything in-house, and we're small.
Sure. So I think that a lot of agencies, digital agencies that build websites now, that offer marketing services, they are getting that technology. Even at my company, Atlantic VT, the guys who started with us, they didn't know HTML. It's called HTML5. They didn't know that coding until we started getting requests from for-profit clients that wanted that technology so that they didn't have to build two separate sites. And then we learned it in the last 12 to 18 months. So really, it would be about, I can't speak to your community, and if you want to work with a local agency, it would just it's tough. I mean, I don't even have a source that I go to all the time. I just have it as one of my Google alerts, and so I'm starting to see more and more agencies are offering that as a service.
HTML5 is helpful.
Great. Okay, so just, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this because I want to make sure that you all come away with an exciting thing I'm doing, which will provide you with a ton of education class today. But what I want to make sure is when you do get to creating a mobile website for your organization, there's a couple different options. You can have actually different URLs, which used to, again, because technology is growing so fast, it used to be you almost had to in order to have it redirect to a mobile site, or to a mobile site. But now you can make it so that it's only one URL. So from a branding perspective and just a lack of confusion perspective, I highly recommend you only use one URL. You want to make sure that there's a large call to action. You want to make sure that your navigation, so all the different choices that people are going to have. And this will look different if it's a nonprofit site, right? I mean, if you're looking to send somebody to donate, this will probably say, donate now, right? But what I'm trying to get across here is that obviously this is an optimized site for mobile. It's done responsive, and it looks completely different than if you went to the desktop version of this website. So I used to say in previous sessions that I spoke at, I would ask everybody to take out their mobile phone and pull up their organization, but have you all done that before? Have you all been to your nonprofit website and seen what it looks like? Is there anybody who has a mobile optimized site that wants to talk about it? Yeah?
I work for a membership-based organization that's 1,000 members, and we realize that the only reason that people go on our site is for the directory from their mobile phone, and that's they want to connect with one another, and that's our mission to connect them. So that's pretty much all we have is donate and directory, the top functions, and then the rest of it is just text. But it's just optimized that way.
Excellent, excellent. That's a really good point that I want to bring up. For those nonprofits out there that have any physical venue, so if you're a museum, if you're a hospital, if you're an educational institution, anywhere where people are going to go for services or products or whatever it may be, you need to jump on the bandwagon even faster because people need to understand how to get, I mean, we work with a lot of Habitat for Humanity organizations, and I don't know about in your communities, but we have big reuse centers where a lot of builders will send, they'll put all their stuff there, and you can go and donate information, or donate products from your house, and people were going at 25% of their traffic was coming from mobile to go find, these places, but they weren't optimized for mobile. So imagine the impact that you could make if you were able to easily find the information that you were looking for from your mobile device. So social media, I mean, it really depends on how prominent you are on social media. We wanted to share the content that we were doing, and so that was something that we really had prominently. But what I want to point out here is that big call to action, throughout the pages, you don't want to take up such a small screen with the whole navigation issue. Okay, so here's where it really gets down into understanding that obviously, while your jobs are mostly as fundraisers, these are the areas where you're going to really start getting, the new donors that you need, right? And they're not going to just come on, I mean, unless they're giving that one-time gift to their friend who's running in the race or what have you, you want to get those new folks engaged in your cause. And advocacy, program delivery, and volunteering are three really big ways to do that. Which will all translate into fundraising. And again, mobile is a great area in which to do this. Are there any nonprofits that here who depend mostly on getting money from foundations and grants and government agencies here? A couple? I know the autism, that's a big area. And when we have a client in North Carolina, well, soon to be client, hopefully, North Carolina Autism Society, and they get 95% of their money from the city and states, municipalities, and so forth. And so what I try to educate them on is the flip side, which I know that I'm not going to spend much time on because you guys are fundraisers, but programs such as education, such as helping parents cope with kids who have autism, but they live in really rural counties and they can't get to the training session that happens once or twice a month at the headquarters. I mean, there's so many things that mobile can do beyond fundraising that is really, we're just starting to scratch the surface on. So I just want to kind of plant that seed, because even though most of you guys are focused more on individual donations and not government, not necessarily government, but on foundation grants, I foresee a huge push in the future, and hopefully it won't be far down the road, where foundations and other agencies that give out money, whether it be a community foundation or a business foundation, whatever it may be, they're going to focus specifically on mobile technology for their grants, because the capacity to deliver programs on mobile devices is so huge. I mean, mobile erases the digital divide when you really think about it, because even the underserved, the poor in our communities, they have mobile smartphones, because it's one bill for everything that they need. So they may not even access the internet from a laptop or desktop. Their only access to internet is going to be on a mobile phone. So imagine if you provide services to them as an organization and they can't access it easily from mobile, that's going to be a really big problem. And it's going to affect how many people you're able to help. So we did, my company did a deployment with MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I wanted to quickly point out, again, this is not specific to fundraising. So again, I apologize, but it is about growing their database. So I'm sure every single one of you here need to grow your database, right? Because then you can get more donations. So they've invested a lot of their budget over the last decade into doing really in-depth research studies on how to talk to kids, right? Because, I mean, they're completely, I mean, generations now are just, we all react to things so differently now, and how we respond to media and so on and so forth. And so they created this handbook, and they had, it was a couple of markets that they had bus wraps running, right? So they obviously, if they're going to promote something on bus wraps where people are out on the bus, and they need to make it mobile. So their the dual purpose campaign was about sharing educational resources and about growing their database through email capture. So what we did was, and again, this is the abridged version, but we had to obviously make sure that their Convio database was completely integrated with the mobile optimized piece that we are doing, so that when they captured the email, it went into their Convio database, so there was no silos of information. We made sure that we added a landing page on Google Analytics, so that when somebody gave their email address for this Power of Parents campaign handbook, that we could count it, right? And in just a 1 month period, this is more of a pilot test campaign in a couple of markets, so I can't really give you the scope of it, but they collected 376 emails. Now, obviously, they're a national organization, and so it's not easy if you're just a locally based or state-based organization. But, I mean, even if you were to get 50 new emails in a month, would that not, I mean, as a smaller organization, would that not be something that would be compelling? Because those are new people. So this was a 2.28% conversion. The other thing I wanted to point out with this campaign is that the messaging was really key, because people really, they had like over 16,000 visits to the mobile site, so there was obviously getting a lot of impressions. So we had a couple of items that were actually free, and then they had to give their email to get the Power of Parents campaign handbook. So having free and paid, meaning pay with your email address, was really a good balance. And so I recommend definitely, if you're going to do campaigns like this, or you're trying to cultivate and get new emails, that you make sure to get information out to them first before you ask for email, for donation, or for registration. All right. So one thing I just mentioned is we did, we're in the middle of my company of doing a $25,000 grant contest. Unfortunately, its submissions have closed, or else I would have encouraged all of you to apply, because it's $25,000 worth of our work. My company's very philanthropic. We do work with a lot of charities. But these were some of the submissions. I got over 41 submissions, and I had a panel of judges, somebody from Blackbaud, somebody from Joe from Selfish Giving, and a few others in the field helped me narrow it down to the top 12. And what I've been doing is I've been having mobile strategy sessions with them. And we're actually going to be starting a portion of the campaign contest next week, where they're all submitting videos. And they're going to have to talk about how the mobile grant is going to help move their mission forward. So I've included a link at the end of the presentation, and I highly encourage you guys to get engaged in this because it's really going to talk about all different types of nonprofits and how mobile can definitely affect their cause. One of them is an organization called Passage Home. I just wanted to point out this example because it's very fundraising specific, and I think that are all of you familiar with the whole Heifer International concept of, because people really like to, they aren't writing checks anymore and saying, good luck, blind faith, I know exactly that you're gonna do this the right way. They wanna feel like they know that they're touching somebody's lives directly. And so this great lady, she had this idea, and they help give people a step up in the community, they were maybe homeless or they've been addicts. So her idea was to make a nonprofit registry app. So instead of like people giving, necessarily dollars, right? They're trying to turn it into actual items. And so that was just one idea that I wanted to point out there, that you're going to start seeing more and more of these come about, maybe not a native app, but I think that these types of ideas where you can turn, dollars, make it a concept where people are feeling like they're doing something more than just giving you a dollar amount. So mobile is a great way of doing that because, again, it's adding that engagement level. Okay, so some other ways that those of you who may think I have no money, I can't even, figure out what I'm doing right now with my fundraising, and finding enough money for it. There's some creative ideas. I mean, we work with a lot of organizations that, mobile's so new. I mean, you can't even, you can follow with American Cancer Society is a great organization to follow. MS Society is going to be coming out with some new mobile tools for fundraising, National MS Society. But there's still a lot of early adoption going on in this space. So you can imagine, I've been talking about this for 3 years. I'm like, finally, people are catching up with me, which is very encouraging. But you can always approach, if you work with an outside vendor, say, hey, that's looking to work with you, but they need to show the value in developing mobile. Ask them to, partner with you for an exchange, reduced rate. So that, and of course, you're going to have to give them access to your information. But it'll be a win-win because clearly they're going to be very vested in making sure that your mobile solution, whether it be a new mobile website, whether it be a mobile fundraising app, and let me just clarify too, native applications, I think for fundraising are not something you're going to see. And that's where I talked about at the beginning that Tap and Give is actually a bit of a failure because A, it was built in 2009 and so people were just playing games and nothing else on mobile. But secondly, that nobody's going to download an app simply to give, right? You have to have it engaging. But mobile web apps, which are something that is available through, the mobile web, is something you're going to see more and more of, and that's what I was alluding to with National MS Society and Susan G. Komen. Yes?
Can you explain what a native app is and a registry app?
So the registry app is just an example of this lady that she called it that. It's not something that's across an industry or anything. That was just something that she called it was going to be a native app application, meaning it could be built for iPhone or Android or BlackBerry. Well, we aren't going to see any kind of BlackBerry anymore. Sure. But so that's just a general application of any kind. This registry app was an idea that the woman from this nonprofit Passage Home had, where she, people could actually pick and choose. Like, oh, they have a summer camp, so we're gonna we're gonna buy all the kids towels for the summer, for $500. I'm just making this up. But it would be, people could pick things that they needed, the nonprofit needed, as opposed to saying, I'm gonna just give $500 and, I'm not sure how they're gonna use it.
What's a native app?
So native app is something that's built specific to the actual phone. So the iPhone, you have to build one particular app for the iPhone that's different from the Android. So what I'm alluding to with web applications is that it's actually different from a mobile website, and I'm getting very technical here, so I apologize, but I think it's, for those of you who understand this, it's really important to signify the difference, is that a mobile web application has the ability to integrate with your database still, to feed information so you're not having silos of contact and donations and everything like that. Whereas a mobile website is more going to be where people are consuming information, they're not necessarily going to be engaging with it. Does that make sense? Other things that I've been talking with a lot of nonprofits about, specifically with the 12 that I'm having sessions with, is, cause marketing is huge. And mobile and corporate and business and retail companies, I mean, they can't get enough of mobile. If you know anybody that works, for a for-profit and it's a brand, like a retail brand or anything, and you mention mobile to them, they could probably talk to you about it because mobile marketing is huge. And so the ability to have eyeballs for your constituents, like I gave an example, I'm working with this organization in North Carolina, and they have this show called That Cancer Show. And they're going to be able to reach all these people, and it's going to be a call-in show. And they're worried because it's a new program, and they're like, "How are we going to, get underwriting for this?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? I mean, if you have a mobile-optimized page for that cancer show where people can download it and listen to it later on as a podcast, and you create this whole presence for that on mobile, you are going to be able to get." For-profits, whether it be a car dealership, whether it be, where I'm going with this. I mean, they do want those eyeballs, and they're going to be willing to, underwrite these types of investments to get those eyeballs. Another big thing is getting sponsors engaged with contests. I mean, obviously, if you've been hearing about social media, that is a huge way to get new supporters or new engaged folks on under your nonprofit. And I think that regional organizations, regional businesses are doing this as well. And they realize that anything that's mobile and social and local, those three go together. And so you can create some alliances and some partnerships with these businesses in your communities that'll be a win-win. And you can use mobile technology as a way to capture those folks. And again, I know that there's not many of you that focus on grant writing in here when it comes to funding, but getting services out and the help, human services, education, museums, any of those areas where you have a physical venue or you have services that you're providing to folks in your community, definitely there's going to be more and more grants available for those types of programs. And this is just an example of the QR code for Joe Waters' Cause Talk Radio. So again, as I was saying in the beginning, the time is now. I mean, there's really no, I'm worried for people that don't start developing a mobile strategy because we have more nonprofits today than at any point in history, and I don't think everybody's gonna make it. It's, I know this is kind of an unusual analogy, but I mean, I just, I forgot to put sunscreen on the other day, and it's like, you're gonna get burned if you don't start creating a mobile strategy. And I hope that today has been kind of a little bit of an eye-opener. I know some of this stuff is really dry, but it's really important because you want those folks in their back pocket. You want to be there, okay? The other thing that I've noticed in the research I've done is that younger givers, younger donors, they don't have 10 plus charities that they give to. They focus on, 2 or 3, and those are the ones that they're gonna stick with. And if you're not one of those 2 or 3, guess what? I mean, they're not going to be paying attention. So the top 3 reasons really to go mobile, as I said, were adoption. You can see that mobile is being adopted at breakneck speed. Our expectations, I mean, if you go and check in, on Southwest on mobile, or you buy things on mobile, people are like, oh, people aren't gonna buy things on mobile. It happens all the time. That's just like saying nobody's gonna give a $1,000 donation via email or via the internet. Of course they do, all the time now. So our expectations are changing, and you need to meet those expectations. And frankly, competition. If you don't do it, then it's gonna be one of your quote-unquote competitors, which I hate to call in the nonprofit sector, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. And if you're not doing it, they're going to go to people who understand their needs, their wants, and their lifestyle. I like this. Gosh, you're going to think I have a crush on Joe, but he's really a very dynamic guy and very funny. And so I definitely suggest going to selfachieving.com because particularly for cause marketing, but he just has a lot of great things. Social networks are the thread that is surrounding us with information from our many connections. Nonprofits get this, but what they're not getting is that mobile is and will increasingly become the needle through which this thread is passed. And I thought that was just a really great analogy of how mobile is, it's really the channel where you're gonna reach everybody, not only with social, but all the other things that you're asking them to do. So that's all I have, but I wanted to make sure we saved enough time. We have about 10 minutes left for any questions. Yes?
What are the hallmarks of a well-designed mobile page, if you will? I mean, if you're adapting your desktop web page, your regular website to a mobile app, what should it look like? I mean, I noticed the browsing is gone. That's a tab
Sure.
that you would click on, but
And it's really going to be different. I mean, that was just one example. I've seen examples, like if you go to Tacoma.org on your smartphone, you'll see that they actually show the navigations, right? And donate is clearly one of them, and that's certainly something. And so it's really going to depend on what you want to emphasize for your nonprofit. I mean, if it's the homepage, then clearly talking about like one of the big campaigns that you're doing right now. Or how to get to your location if you're a physical venue. It's really, that's why it's really difficult to talk to a group like you guys sometimes, because it's going to be so different depending on what type of nonprofit you are, that I don't want to give information. But from a usability standpoint, obviously you want to make it as dumbed down as possible, as few words as possible. You don't actually want to use a whole lot of images either, because that tends to eat up space that's unnecessary. You want to have big buttons. You don't want to use hyperlinks. Don't have hyperlinks at all on mobile websites, because think about, you're just going to end up frustrating people, because they're going to accidentally tap it and it's not where they wanted to go. So, if you look back at the one that I had on there, obviously having, bigger buttons. And really, I would just start researching different websites and going to retail sites is a great example, because they're going to, a lot of the bigger brands are going to have mobile. And really understanding, what information you want to have on there. Obviously, donate. Obviously, getting an email capture in there. But it really is going to depend on what page you're talking about and if there's a particular campaign that you're wanting to push.
so responsive design that's becoming more prevalent, as you said,
Yes.
would automatically incorporate those changes as the basic website was designed. Is that correct? Am I understanding that?
You would,
correct?
well, you would work, if it were somebody in my committee, they would come and they'd say, okay, well, we want to create a responsive site along with we're doing our whole new site. And so we would walk through, okay, well, who are your audiences? What are your programs? What is it that you want to prioritize? So we would pick and choose based on, your, existing flow of your site now.
Okay, so that has more to do with content than visibility on the mobile, on a mobile app, on a mobile device. Am I correct about that?
Well, the content's going to be displayed in different ways, and it's going to be, so that you're only having to, you don't want to have a lot of choices on one page. So it's a matter of how you're going to drill down, really, and what's going to take priority. Anybody else have questions? Yes.
You were talking before about delivering services that your nonprofit does. And we drafted ideas on how to do that. The problem that was that we're at a crossroads. We go with the native app, and we can say use a camera, which is kind of what we need in order to do it, or do we use a web-based app where we don't have access to camera? How far away do you think we are being able to harness the hardware?
That's a really good question, and I wish I knew. It's very plausible that iPhone and Android could open up their devices, or the builders of the Android devices will open up that technology so that the native uses such as the phone could be used in a web app. Right now, that's still not possible, but if it's certainly a big part of what your program would be, then you need it, right?
Right.
So I just don't have that answer. I would love to say it's going to be within the next year, and that's very possible. Sorry?
Do you think we'll ever get there?
I do. Yep. That was that maybe. Yes.
I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the difference between, visibility on a mobile phone, viewing the website, versus like a mobile giving campaign where you are asking people to text and donate. Should you be marketing to people on the mobile website to go ahead and text, or are you?
That's a really good question, because actually MAD had a text option on that mobile optimized, right? Then they weren't asking necessarily for an online donation because their whole goal, right, was to deliver the education and collect emails. But they did find that a few people actually gave. I didn't track the numbers, but it was something that they opted to offer in that mobile experience, was to provide a text to give component. Now, if I were to go in and talk to them, and I'd say, they were probably one of those organizations that said, oh, look at who's doing mobile, we better do text to give, or you know what I mean? I even did it myself. I called it mobile instead of text to give, which I'm like trying really hard not to do because everybody does it. They just automatically think text to give. So it's really going to depend. I frankly think that SMS, meaning just the messaging piece, not the giving piece, is going to be a great tool, particularly like QuitBuddy. If you want to understand better, QuitBuddy with American Cancer Society is a fascinating program. I talk about it all the time. That's really a great way to get folks engaged in your cause, is by using mobile to help them, right? It's about quitting smoking, and so you get a text every day. And we talked about it at MAD. The thing that they could do is, how do kids talk, or how do they avoid drinking when there's peer pressure? Well, what if they were able to text something like, I don't know what the word would be, buddy, I guess you could just use again. And they could text it like they were texting a friend of theirs, and they get this message that's like, hey, yo, say this, or you know what I mean? Like, and they're just like, hey, no, I'm good, I'm gonna actually drive, or whatever. But they feel like they're actually being helped by somebody with this thought out messaging. How powerful is that?
Cool. Yeah.
So, yes.
Let's just pretend I had a board member who is completely obsessed with us getting a text to give program.
Okay.
What answers would you put in my mouth to tell that person? And if they absolutely wouldn't take my advice, what companies, or where would you start to look at that?
Okay. So first of all, you'd have to educate them that you'd realize that, first of all, you wait about 3 months for the donations. You typically don't get all the full contact information. It goes through about 2 sets of hands before you get it. So it cannibalizes about anywhere from 8% to plus of your gift. And you have to be at least $500,000 in your organization, which, that may not be an issue for you. But I think that the timing and the contact information is critical. That, and if you do get it, how does it get integrated? Do you have a seamless integration into your CMS or your database? So those are all things that are really, why not invest in having a couple of mobile donation pages, web donation pages made, so that when you send out emails, which you're already doing, you're not trying to collect phone numbers, right? You're already sending out emails, and that's something you've been probably doing for a while. Why not make it easier to to allow people to give from mobile? As far as the companies, I really I don't even get on top of text to give as much, to be honest. I know that like Mobile Cause is here, and they're great people, they have great tools, but they've even had to flip the switch and get away from only text to give as far as their communications, because it's really not the answer, the holy grail for 97–98% of charities out there. So, yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.